How's it going, fam? Welcome back to Erica's EDC, and today we're going to do a video that I've been wanting to do for a while, but my buddy Doggone John really inspired me through conversation to make this video either yesterday or the day before. So we're going to talk about types of edges, BTE, sharpening, just kind of how all of that works, because I've noticed through a number of exchanges with people that a lot of customers don't understand that when you buy a production knife like this, generally speaking, you're going to have a convex edge, okay? Now, let me preface with the fact that unless you are like insanely skilled at freehand sharpening like Michael Christie or Neves Knives or something, or you use a sharpening system like a fixed angle system, nearly every knife is going to have some level of convexity to it, but it very much varies, okay? I will tell you right now, if you're decent at freehand sharpening, you can create a less convex edge than you will get from the factory on any production knife. So I want to explain why, what they use to create the edges, and how you can remedy your knife not performing, even if it is in a like softer, thicker steel or a simple carbon steel or something. If it's not performing well, there are things that you can do to enhance your performance. And this obviously goes for any knife, but generally speaking, when you get a higher end knife or a custom knife, it just performs better in general. But my whole point is there are things you can do to improve your knife's life and performance. So I'm going to move some of these out of the way. Let's talk about generally what we get in production knives, okay? So you have to remember that, first of all, in a production knife setting, they're doing large batches, which means multiple knives getting heat treated and quenched and all of that at the same time, okay? Also, because the goal is to pump them out as quickly and efficiently and as cheaply as possible, you have to remember we are going to generally see thicker knives because there's less, stock removal, essentially. We're going to see lower hardness because it's really difficult in a mass production setting to get knives, above 60 HRC with minimal effort. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to put effort into creating that. And a lot of companies just generally don't have the time. They don't want to spend the money. It's just not what they want. So we generally see these thick, soft knives, but you also have to remember, on top of that, they're being sharpened very quickly on a grinding wheel or a belt, okay? Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any of this. I'm literally just explaining, like, if you were to go to a production establishment, these are the things that you're going to see, because that's how it is. Like, you're not going to see men sitting at a table with a sharpening stone putting the final edge on your knife. That's not going to happen. What you are going to see is a bunch of belt grinders set up in a line, and a bunch of dudes with respirator masks on and whatever, zoo, zoo, next, zoo, zoo, over and over and over, okay? So that not only creates an instantly burnt, fatigued edge, but also they're convex, right? Because a belt has give. If the belt on the belt grinder was as tight as possible, the moment that you turned that on, the belt would snap because there would be too much tension. You have to have slack. Because of the slack, it will create a mild convex edge. Same with the grinding wheel, right? Human hands, they're not completely still. Like, can you use jigs for all these things? Yes, but a lot of times we're just seeing dudes not really using jigs or anything in mass production settings, and they're kind of just going through these blades as quickly as possible, and you're getting a convex edge. The good thing about a convex edge is that it is tough, right? So you know, you can go out and baton with these and smash things and pry and whatever. And if they are 30 thou BTE, nothing's going to really happen to that edge other than dulling. The tricky part is that a convex, thick, soft edge is not going to cut and slice very long, okay? So if you have a knife that is, 58 HRC, and it's a steel that has lower edge retention to begin with, and it is 30 thou behind the edge, and it has a convex edge, your cutting efficiency and performance is starting right out the gate pretty low, with the icing on the cake being this is going to have a burnt, fatigued edge, nearly guaranteed. What can we do to remedy that, guys? How can we fix this? Well, I highly suggest learning how to sharpen, whether it's on a fixed angle system, KME or, there are so many now, I don't even know, WorkSharp, TS Prof something. There's a whole bunch. They all vary in price. You can either buy a fixed angle system, and that's really going to keep that edge flat. Or you can learn how to freehand sharpen. And again, we are not robots, we are humans. So unless you are, a god at sharpening, there will be a very mild level of convexity to even freehand sharpening. But the good news is you have to remember there's only one piece to this particular puzzle providing that mild convexity, which is your human hand. It's not like the stone itself is providing the convex edge on top of our human error. You know what I'm saying? Like with the belt grinding, you have the belt that has a little bit of slack and human hands, which inevitably creates a little bit of a convex. At least with freehand sharpening, the stone, if it is, properly prepared and whatnot, your stone should be completely flat, have no give, should not move. And the only thing that could mildly convex your edge is your own hand. So learn how to really hold your angle. But at least this doesn't move, okay? So I would highly suggest that first. The second thing would be laying this edge back, guys. That can greatly improve your cutting performance. If you take your edge bevel and you bring it back a little bit, and change your degrees per side, DPS, right? We always talk about DPS on the channel. If you change your degrees per side, that can really help you. Even if it's a knife that is super thick behind the edge like this, if you bring that edge back, lay it back, that is going to be a game changer. So generally speaking, a lot of knives from the factory, they come with a 20 DPS angle, okay? So generally speaking, on a lot of knives that I've noticed, Benchmade, Essie, stuff like that, they're generally going to be 20 degrees per side. You can bring that down to 17, maybe even 15, depending on what you're going to use your knife for, and that's going to really change how your knife slices and for how long, okay? I really highly recommend laying your edge back if you are not getting the time period of cutting that you want from your knife. Now, obviously, the caveat is the blade steel, okay, guys? Like, if you're buying a 440C garbage knife, it's not going to cut long no matter what you do, but you can at least enhance it a little bit by laying that edge back, okay? A lot of people don't seem to know that most edges that they get are convexed. You know what I'm saying? It's very rare that we have knives that are actually hand sharpened. You know, that term hand sharpened is thrown around a lot. I know a number of people that say that their knives are hand sharpened, and what they actually mean is they sit down and use a fixed angle system, which is fine. Like, it creates a beautiful edge. But, like, hand sharpening to me means that you took the knife and you hand sharpened it on a stone. That's super rare. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people don't have time to sit down and do that. When you do get it, your results are going to be insane right out of the gate, right? But a lot of people don't have that time to provide that. So I highly suggest learning how to sharpen. You don't need anything expensive. This is literally a 325 stone. I recommend, if you need a one and done stone, like a 600 grit DMT, but 325 is also really great. The other thing I really want to drive home is the BTE, or like the stock thickness of the knife, okay? So, a lot of stock thicknesses on especially fixed blades, they're going to be the same. Like, you have to remember, nearly everyone is getting their steel from the same place. It's not like we have 2,500 steel providers for people in the US. Like, we all know everyone is using Niagara, everyone's using New Jersey Steel Bear, and we all know where it's all coming from, and it's being created by the same people. The heat treats will be different depending on the company or the person, but the steel's all coming from the same place, and it's all the same stock thickness, essentially. So what you can do is look at your blade shape, and you can at least work with that, because what happens is, even though a lot of the knives, whether they're from a custom maker or a production company, even though the stock thicknesses are going to generally be the same, what really does change things is the blade shape, right? Because depending on how wide the blade is in this direction, how much belly is provided in the design, that is also telling you how much room there is to physically narrow and slim that BTE out, right? Because if you have a blade that's very wide in this direction, you can also kind of assume that it is thinning out. It has more room to thin out, okay? Obviously, there are knives that are like completely sharpened pry bars, but my whole point is a knife that has a good amount of belly is generally going to be a better slicer, okay? If it has a thicker stock thickness. So we'll take these two, for example, real quick. This is a dart from Levi at Northern Knife Works. This is in K390, and you can see that this stock thickness is pretty thin, okay? Really thin and slicey. However, it doesn't have a ton of room to thin out because of the shape of the blade. Now, luckily, that's fine, because we started with a thinner stock thickness to begin with. So this knife, although it's very thin actually in this dimension, it's still only 10 thou BTE, which is very, very thin. So this knife is crazy thin and slicey, even though it doesn't have a lot of belly, because it started off being thin in the first place. We can take a look at this knife here, which is way larger. This is an outdoors knife. This is the Chum from Dusty at Duckhead Forge. This is a hunting and outdoors knife. Way thicker stock thickness, but very wide, has a bunch of room to thin out, and this actually is the same BTE as this knife. So you can see how stock thickness and grind and blade profile can change things, because these two have identical 10 thou BTE, yet look at how different they are, and look at how different the stock thickness is. So really think about that on your next purchase, guys. Knives, it's so easy to look at them and be like, oh, that looks cool, I'm going to buy it. And then you get it, and it's like, ooh, this is not cutting as well as I want it to. Like, what the heck? I would definitely think about what blade shape you want for the cutting tasks that you encounter. Think about blade stock thickness. A lot of people are actually starting to provide that now. Companies are actually starting to provide that now on their websites and on dealer websites. Really think about that. And then the grind, guys. The grind. That's super important, right? Because if you have a 3/32 stock and it's full flat ground, you can bet your bottom dollar this is going to be crazy slicey. This knife in particular, this Scrawny Lumberjack Splinter is only 5 thou BTE. This is one of my thinnest knives. So if you were looking for something super thin and slicey that you won't really have to touch up for days, and even when it goes dull, it's still going to slice because the geometry will be slicing. It's so thin. Think about that. Really, really thin blade stock to begin with. Full flat, so it thins right out. This is a fabulous slicer. Is this something that you're going to want to take out and baton with, though? Definitely not. So that's where you would want to move up a little bit. You know, that's where you would maybe look at something more like this. That's, I want to say this is 15, 18 thou BTE. I've batoned with this on camera and it did totally fine. Still slices incredibly well. But you can also baton with it because we're starting a little thicker there. Got a little bit of a thicker BTE. So, you know, those are other things to think about, like saber grinds are going to wedge better. There are a whole bunch of hybrids. You can get Scandivex and all of the cuckoo things. There's a whole bunch, but grind is super important as well because that will really dictate how the knife is going to cut. They're all going to cut their knives, but how they're going to cut and for how long, your grind will definitely contribute to that. But yeah, I just wanted to make a video on that because I've talked to a number of people that didn't get, like they didn't know that their production knife had a, you know, slightly convexed edge. And it's like, you know, a lot of them do. A lot of them do. But if you're not pleased with your performance, always think about, you know, laying that edge back a little bit. Use a fixed angle system, set it to 17, 15 DPS. Try that out. Play around with different angles. This knife right here is a Gen 1 Edisto from Primitive Bear Knives, and Alan does all of his edges, you know, in his shop or whatever. I don't think he uses I'm nearly positive he doesn't use a stone. I think he uses a belt or something. But, you know, his knives are very much geared for outdoor use, right? We all know that. Like, his knives are tanks. He just made a video, I think last night on his Instagram, taking a Scandi ground knife that he made and, like, just literally launching chunks of, like, 12 gauge wire over and over, like, taking a mallet, smashing the knife through it, and the pieces are going flying over and over. And then the knife, like, clean cut paper after. It was insane. His knives are really incredible. But they're very much built for, like, outdoor use, batoning, camp tasks, hunting, stuff like that. So I have measured all of my Primitive Bear knives, and they tend to be, like, 28 to 30 thou BTE, which is a little thicker. So on my knives from Alan, I just lay that edge back, and it is unbelievable how much that changes the cutting performance of the knife. Just a simple little thing like laying it back can really change things. So, you know, you don't have to call the knife garbage right out the gate. Play around with angles. Play around with taking away that convexed edge. Play around with bringing it back a little bit, seeing if that helps prolong the edge retention of your knife. You know? Something that seems very obvious, but we don't think about it sometimes, right? Or we don't even know. So I just wanted to make a video about that. Definitely use a stone, really flatten that edge out, lay it back, make it nice and thin and crispy. See if that helps your cutting performance. Obviously, if you want to go into the woods and bash your knife through logs, a convexed, nice, tough edge is probably for you. But just remember, it's not going to cut and slice nearly as well. You know, it's about compromise. So just wanted to make that quick little video. Let me know down in the comments what types of edges you guys like. I like all of them. I use convex edges. I use non-convex edges. I use everything. But let me know what you guys like down in the comments below. I will see you guys on the next video. Go use your shit. Learn how to sharpen your knives. I'll see you guys on the next video. I love you so much, fam. Take care.